All right, welcome back, or if you're joining us for the first time, thanks for being here. This is your and my bebop lick of the day. Today I wanted to look at something from Hank Mobley, his solo on This I Dig of You, which is a very famous solo, or famous recording anyway, from the Soul Station album from 1960. And what I want to focus on is actually just the first four measures of his solo on This I Dig of You. And let's hear it. Let's hear what Hank sounds like when he's playing it. Here we go. Just that much. Let's slow it down a little bit. Let's see. Thanks to software, we can slow it down. Alright, now let's look at it. Bring the solo up on the screen. There we go. So we're just looking at this segment here, those first four measures. It just looks good, even if you don't hear it. Just the contour of the line. Up, little dip here, then back down the scale, back up, finally resolve. Beautiful. All right, so the first thing I want to look at is this little segment right here, this measure. So we can say it's a 2-5 in the key of B flat. And this note is what I want to focus on first. So that C sharp over the F7 chord. So what note would that be? That would be, we'd be thinking of that as like the raised fifth or the augmented. Think of the F, think of F7, think of that as an augmented chord when we have that C sharp over that chord. Okay, so, but if we kind of look at it in context, we have B flat. So descending this C minor 7 chord, right, the chord tones. But instead of going down to the root of C minor, which would be, of course, C, we go to the C sharp. So we could hear that sound where if it were to just go, that's playing the C, but what this is C sharp. It's got that rub to it, really distinctive sound. It's kind of used to the augmented sound on the 5 chord. This is like, we hear this in Lester Young, we hear it in Charlie Parker, we hear it in Louis Armstrong. So really the whole tradition of the music makes use of this sound. But sometimes I think it gets a little bit overlooked when we're talking about scales and things. But so that's the first thing I wanted to look at. But then kind of to zoom out a little bit, looking at how this line works. So it's climbing up. This is kind of the very top of the solo, up to the root of the key, B flat, the key of the song, and then we have this little moment where it dips down this kind of arpeggiated type sound, but then from there it leaps back up from C sharp to A. So we kind of look at it in that zoomed out way where we got this B flat, a little interruption with these 3 notes, but then ultimately goes from B flat to this A here and continues down a scale line. So we can think of this as like going up the scale, a little moment of interesting contour going down to that augmented sound, but then continuing, so it's like up and then down the scale line. And so what's going on with the scale line? It's going down the B flat major scale. We're in the key B flat. So it starts on B4, and then straight down the B flat major scale. But then we have a chromatic note from G to G sharp to F. So we added a chromatic passing tone. This sometimes is referred to as the major bebop scale, this major scale with a passing tone between 6 and 5. I'm hesitant to use that term just because, when we're talking about music, when we're talking about recordings of players from that era, from 40s, 50s, 60s, to then say they play bebop scales always feels a little weird to me, because that was just a term that was, at least as far as I understand it, was introduced somewhat later in schools and things. David Baker. All due respect to David Baker for sure, but I just tend to think of it as like a major scale with passing tone, chromatic passing tone added just to get the chord tones to land on the beats we want. We see another example of that right here. So going from F to E flat, so another chromatic passing tone. So now we have this little string of chromaticism, right? G, G flat, F, E, down to E flat. It's all chromatic through that little segment. And then, so that's our downward contour, this whole line. But then it climbs up an arpeggio, right? Like a major 7 arpeggio off of that E flat. And then to end the phrase, it's just what we call a little enclosure, right? A, C, B flat. The enclosure is A and C are enclosuring. A and C enclose the B flat, right? You have one note below the target note, one note above it, and then you play the target note. So again, it's just a beautiful little chunk. Every note in its right place, and it just flies by in a second. But when we pause and slow down and really look at what Hank Mobley is doing here, it's beautiful. And then we can just see also just, one other thing we can point out is if we're talking about licks, two pretty sweet, just, standalone 2/5 licks like in this first measure, this first 2/5 here. Is a nice lick to grab and practice in different keys, and then also this one. Very useful. So thanks to Hank Mobley, and thank you for tuning in. This has been your bebop lick of the day. Talk to you later.